going to go right into our final session of the conference, and a stage change is taking place around me. I'm going to welcome up these friends of mine to talk on the pro-life issue. This is something we haven't actually discussed from the main stage yet this week, and so I wanted to save one of the best for last. I think this is a very significant discussion, and I appreciate you all sticking with us till the end so that we can have this important discussion. This panel is going to be led by a great friend of mine, Tom McClusky. Many of you know Tom. He's been serving in various roles on Capitol Hill since I was in elementary school, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. No, he used to head up government affairs at FRC, where I first met him in the early 2000s, and then he went on to March for Life Action, and now he's got his own shop. He works for Catholic Vote and other organizations in that capacity, and we're just really fortunate to have him with us today to lead our final panel. Tom?
Thanks. I don't know if, do I need this? No, I have a... Thanks everybody for coming here today, and I want to thank Craig and Amanda and Jeremy and John and everybody who helped put this conference on. I especially do want to thank Amanda because she has generously said she will personally pay for any robes you take out of the room today. So I do appreciate that. Now when trying to think of a panel, the big thing in the room is Dobbs. How have we reacted to Dobbs? We've had some wins, we've had some losses. I loved right after Dobbs happened, I was like, the Washington Post would call and Politico would call, and it's like, who's the person behind this? Who's the person behind this? And it's like, well, they didn't seem to understand God. And I think if you're God's publicist, you're probably not going to return a call from the Washington Post. So they were just trying to find who was that one person who helped guide everything through. And what they couldn't understand was it wasn't just one person. It was well over 50 years of everybody in different aspects of the movement doing important. I mean, the main people who probably were crucial in getting Dobbs, we'll never know their names. The people praying in front of an abortion facility, or the people working at a pregnancy care center and volunteering their time, the donors who help all of our organizations to do what we do. However, we do have, the best thing about the pro-life movement, I think, is its diversity. We are united, but not exactly uniform. And with our panelists today, I'm not going to go deep into bios. I suggest you do read their bios, though, except we do have diversity on this panel. We have John Mize from AUL, the CEO of AUL. I mean, and you should read his panel, or read his bio. And the work in the states that AOL has done, they were really one of the ones that were just the ones cutting through in the states, getting things done, helping out all the state groups before there were anybody else really doing it. Then when you go to Students for Life, while they're very well-rounded, it's the grassroots, it's the activists that they really get going. And Kristi's the communications guru. And without Students for Life, and Kristen, the head of Students for Life, is just the fighter. I always love being in a room with her because then I'm not always the mean one. And Kristen does it much better than I. And then kind of the 500-pound gorilla, and this is no insult to you, Bob, is SBA List. Because I can remember when SBA List, when Marjorie took over SBA List, it was a PAC, and pro-life movement really didn't have many PACs. And it didn't have a lot of money. And Marjorie really turned that into a powerhouse. And you've grown so much beyond, you even then changed your name to SBA Pro-Life America. And up on Capitol Hill, your legislative team, I think, is unparalleled. With people like, well, you had Autumn Christensen, but Marjorie herself and Jamie Dangers. And Bob has been kind of like, if anybody's here seen The Godfather, the consigliere. That almost just, he is the one who's really, Marjorie is a powerhouse in herself, except to have people on your right hand and your left hand, like Bob, has really guided to make SBA List the powerhouse it has been. With all that, I just want to, and I know I'm in a room full of Christians when all the front tables are empty. But I do want to get right into it, and I want to, we can start off going right across about, one is, how did Dobbs happen? And what are some of the best victories we've had since Dobbs? And if we could start that.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So thank you, and thank y'all for hosting this conference. The first thing I want to stress is that we have a massive amount of momentum right now. It is hard to underestimate the momentum that we have. 12 months ago, I think we were all panicked, and we were thinking that we were on a sinking ship, and it is a completely different world. And so, as I think of the biggest victories since Dobbs, one of the largest that I've seen is that I feel like the movement is coalescing, and we are working together. We're swimming in the same direction. We're creating a networked approach. We are on communication with all of the major organizations on a daily basis. Several communications going back and forth, coordinating, and really identifying shared priorities. There was a small meeting in Florida that Kristi was at in January where we aligned around what are the biggest priorities for the movement, and every group around the table agreed, that defunding Planned Parenthood, that re-implementation of REMS, and really an emphasis on pro-family policy was what was needed. And even from January until now, to see the amount of win and momentum that we've seen. I mean, we've defunded Planned Parenthood for the first time ever. I mean, that is such a monumental win for the pro-life movement.
Yeah, that deserves.
I have to say, as a part of that, in terms of victories, the election of Donald Trump and really the elevation of Speaker Johnson, I think has put us in a position where there are pro-life advocates, not only in the administration, but on Capitol Hill, that are willing to be bold, that acknowledge that you can be open about your pro-life convictions and you're going to continue to win elections. Look at Chris Smith. Chris Smith is in New Jersey, and he consistently wins elections, and he is overtly pro-life. You can be a pro-life politician and you can win elections in this country. So to think that you can't and that this is an issue that you have to be super careful about, that's garbage. The other thing that I would add, and this goes to, there's two things. The analysis that Ethics and Public Policy Center, AUL, Live Action, and a few of others have been working really hard on around the claims data set. I have a background in healthcare. I know the power of claims data, healthcare claims. What they have uncovered is absolutely frightening, but it makes absolute sense. I mean, talk to Dr. Francis about this, and she'll tell you, my clinical experience is exactly what I'm seeing in this analysis. We are now on the precipice of working with the FDA to not only re-implement REMS, because this is really the big thorn in our side right now is chemical abortion, but there is potentially a path to actually remove these drugs from the market. Look at Vioxx, for example. If you've got a healthcare background, you know that Vioxx was pulled from the market. It had a serious adverse event rate of about 2%. We are looking at a serious adverse event rate of about 11%, 22 times greater than what the FDA reports in their in the studies that were conducted initially. So there's just, I think, if anything, Tom, it's momentum, and I'd love to hear what Bob and Kristi have to say as well.
Sure. Well, as a mother of four and as a person who's a wordsmith, Tom said think of one. I'm going to supersize it with Costco version. I'm going with three. There's no way I could say one thing. Tom, you knew that. You invited me.
That's why I just said one, knowing.
You did say one, so I'll only do three. I think the first thing that's the victory is that there was a victory in Dobbs at all. We stand on the shoulders of giants. I had the privilege of meeting and talking with Nellie Gray and talking with Phyllis Schlafly, of working with these champions. We are surrounded by a great... Is your mic on? Is that better? Yeah. There we go. Sorry. We're surrounded by the testimonies of people that believed it could be done. That Roe was not a Bible verse, that Roe was an aberration, and that it could come down. And I don't think that we stop and celebrate that enough. And when people were upset after Roe fell, initially a little discombobulated, at Students for Life, we were rejoicing. In 2019, we started putting out We Are the Post-Roe Generation banners. They're very expensive. We carried them at the March for Life. We put it on T-shirts. And we had so many well-meaning pro-lifers come up to us and say, well, you're being politically naive. You look stupid. People who know me know that I've got every reporter worth knowing on this phone. And I would talk to the New York Times and talk to Washington Post and talk to whoever, and we're doing these pre-Dobbs interviews. I would talk about how Roe's going to go. And then they'd turn off the mic and they're like, you don't really believe that, do you? I'm like, yes, I do. I've read the Constitution, have you? It's not there. But not only that, the gates of hell cannot prevail against what the Lord would say, which is that life is life from conception to natural death. Why should I give that up? Why should I accept the disappointment of low expectations? So the fact that we could win, number one, was big. And I think that momentum carries into the defunding, where the fact that we could cut any money from Planned Parenthood at all, I'm disappointed it went from 10 years to 1. We're already getting ready to go back. And frankly, we need the parliamentarian gone, friends. So can I get an amen on that? Because we don't need a roadblock to the truth, which is I don't have to pay for Planned Parenthood. And even the Supreme Court in the South Carolina case says that. So that to me is victory number 2 that flows. And I have been in a room with every one of these gentlemen for decades of my life. Don't do the math. And we have heard so many times, we can't cut Planned Parenthood, we can't cut abortion vendors. Let's just beg for the crumbs at the back of the room. And no, that's just not true. I think we have to hold on to the certainty that when we stand on the side of righteousness, we can win. And my third thing, to try to bring it home, even though it's not my nature, is the momentum at the states in terms of the true experimentation that's taking place. And for us, we have a new Roe situation in the states. When we could see that the ballot initiatives were taking place, and again, the media doing all these interviews that there's no way in hell, and hell is the key word here, that we can do anything pro-life in states because of ballot initiatives. They've got us in the crosshairs. And I'm like, did you just see what happened to Roe? And also, did you see what happened to Roe's champions, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the Democratic Party, where they ran on abortion alone? There has never been a United States or international campaign run on abortion the way the Democratic Party and Harris and Walz ran on abortion. Never in the history of the world. And how did that go for them? Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Although I saw that Kamala Harris is up in the polls, and I would like her to run again. I'm for it. But at the states, we wrote at Students for Life the roadmap for ending abortion. We talked about it in a panel this week. I would ask you to go learn about it. And there's already a template in place for us to kick more people out the proverbial door. And that is in addressing a method and means of abortion. In Carhart v. Gonzalez, a win when Roe is at the heights of its power, we were able to stop partial birth abortion for some very specific legal reasons. So we have developed our chemical abortion legislation in line with those legal truths. The primary legal truth is in the Bible, that God has created us. That's the legal truth I stand on, but Carhart is a nice add-on, and our legislation is organized like that. So I think the third thing that's exciting is the innovation at the states. So,
Bob, do you have?
Good, Kristi, very, very well put, very articulately put. I do want to, on behalf of Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, I do want to thank Craig and Amanda and the organizers of this fantastic conference. We are so proud and happy to be part of it. I was thinking of something as you were talking, Kristi, and that is in my lifetime, I've seen two things that I thought would never happen. One was the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the second was the fall of Roe. And both had monumental importance. And I think the point that you made, Kristi, is one that we shouldn't miss, and that is how incredibly seismic the fall of Roe was, and that we should not forget what a big victory that was for us, because it opened the door for all the other fantastic victories that we can have. Like Kristi, excuse me, I'm going to supersize 1 up to 3. I think we've had 3 major victories since.
Grab your coffees, folk.
One is the defunding of Planned Parenthood. I don't think anybody should underestimate how incredibly important that is. By one estimate, Planned Parenthood's overall budget for the year last year was $1.29 billion with a B dollars. The defunding is going to cost them over $500 million. No wonder they are squealing like a pig about it. The battle's not over. The state of Washington, for example, immediately stepped up and said that they would replenish what was cut out of Medicaid for Planned Parenthood out there. We're going to have to fight that state by state. I would think, around the country. The second thing I would say, and I don't think anybody should miss this, is in the last elective cycle, we won ballot victories in Florida, South Dakota, and Nebraska. All three were critical because up to that point, the narrative was being built that we could not win on the state level. And we had lost not only in states that are hostile to us, but in states like Ohio and Kansas that are very favorable to us in terms of Republican, conservative, pro-life politics. And all of a sudden, we were winning in states, and there's lots of reasons for that. Tom, I don't know if we want to get into that later in terms of why.
Yeah, we can address that next.
I'm sorry?
We can address that next.
Okay, good. But I think that was absolutely absolutely critical that we change that narrative. So I think that's the second big victory we've had. And the third is that quietly we've been accomplishing around the country with certainly the help of groups like AUL and Students for Life and SBA, state legislators around the country that our fantastic staffs work with. There are now 22 states that have laws that protect babies at 12 weeks or sooner, all of which was opened up because Roe fell and Dobbs said that you're allowed to do that. So I think that those are three huge victories that we've had since Dobbs, and I don't think we should understate how important all three were. Things are not perfect. The one thing that Dobbs spurred, the reaction that came from Dobbs that I think none of us anticipated, is the number of federal legislators who say they're pro-life, who put up their hands and said, oh, this is great. Now we don't have to deal with this on the federal level at all. Yep. And kind of walked out of the room and said, I'm still pro-life, but you guys do it on the state level. There's nothing left to do on the federal level. That's absolutely not true. If we don't protect babies on a national level, then most of what we've accomplished is going to go for naught. Mm-hmm. So I would leave it at that point. Okay,
and moderators are usually best seen as eye candy and not heard, but I do want to, because you guys aren't tooting your own horns, just one thing from each organization that I saw is some AUL, you guys wrote the brief that Congress submitted in Dobbs and included overturning Roe at a time when some of the experts were saying, no, you can't do that. The drumbeat on defunding Planned Parenthood, the most consistent drummer has been Students for Life. I mean, I can remember meetings at the White House, and I would go in there and Kristen would already be in there because she'd already had about 10 of them. And one of the big takeaways I got from defunding Planned Parenthood up on Capitol Hill, because as Bob said, we have a lot of people who want to ride our coattails, but they don't want to help us dress. And one of the things is SBA has put on a lobby day. And I've been on Capitol Hill for quite a while now. I've seen a lot of lobby days. I have never seen one so effective and so well put together than the one that SBA list did.
We had 500 people come in for that day.
Right. And that deserves applause. And every single organization that I know of, every pro-life organization, even the Catholic Church, and I'm Catholic myself, they don't always partner, except every single Catholic organization, or every single organization was represented. And you guys brought all that together. And I think that was just a great win. A lot of the people in this room are state-focused. So to your point, Bob, like right after Roe fell, the polling has been great for us. Currently, the formerly federally funded NPR just this morning had an article stating that 64% of the people now support abortion at most stages. And in addition, we did lose some of the initial states as well. We've lost members of Congress now, where we used to have all the Republicans would say they're pro-life. Now we have some. How do we fight?
Yeah, but they just said it. They just didn't mean it, you know?
But so what do you think attributed to that? And also, what can we do to push back on that?
Well, Students for Life's secret sauce for that are primaries. We're the kind of people that if you vote wrong, we'll show up. When I'll give you an example. When the sister senators, 3 Republicans in South Carolina, blocked a pro-life law, we went and primaried them, and they are now invited to other employment because their seats were taken. We flip. I'm in meetings right now at Students for Life, but we're getting ready to primary federal and state office holders because this is a faith in word and deed, my friends. And granted, if you want a street fight, you do want to come to us. So we will do that, but somebody has to. So many people seem to think that it was over post-Roe, but it was just beginning. And Dobbs did not send it back to the states. Dobbs properly invited the states to join in. And I think the biggest fallacy post-Dobbs is that it's no longer federal, it's state. Even our president is wrong about that. It is especially federal as long as we pay for it, and we pay for it. I think the most demonically clever man in the Biden administration was Javier Becerra. I've never seen a person supersize abortion throughout the entire federal government like that. And there's a lot of work just to cut that cancer out. But we are primarying Republicans. And I say Republicans. This morning there was a Pew thing out. I was reading, the Associated Press, has a new poll out, said that 9 in 10 Democrats support abortion, but the majority of Republicans support life. We want our Republican leadership to be the same. I know that SBA does heroic work in getting people elected, but we want to see people who are not R and pro-life. They are pro-life and happen to be R. That's our order of service.
Well, two quick points.
Or even, really, quite frankly, pro-life and D. Wouldn't that be great?
Well,
I'm for miracles. I believe it.
Right now, there isn't a single Democrat who votes with us.
Not in Washington, but in the states. And
right.
So what can we do as a movement to foster those individuals?
On a state-by-state basis, we can. On a federal basis, there isn't a single Democrat who votes with us. Henry Cuellar of Texas claims that he's pro-life. On our scorecard, he has an F, not a single pro-life vote, and he's being challenged by a former Democrat mayor who's converted to the Republican Party, who I think will beat him in November, which I think would be good news. 2 quick points. One is, if you do not have some kind of federal protection for life, then what's going to happen is abortion tourism, chemical abortion are both going to wipe out the state protections that we are passing around the country. Because even though we will have state protections at 12 weeks, in 22 different states, and that'll expand because of the great work being done by a lot of the groups up here. Abortion tourism will be, and chemical abortion will be wiping all that out. They'll be meaningless. And the other point I would make is one thing that we haven't talked about here, and something that we saw during the Planned Parenthood battle up on the Hill. And thank you for the kind words about the lobby day, by the way, Tom. We worked very closely with leadership in the House and the Senate in the final days leading up to passage. John Thune and Lindsey Graham on the Senate side. Lindsey Graham's chairman of the Budget Committee, and of course John Thune is the Senate leader. Mike Johnson, Steve Scalise on the House side were all rock-ribbed committed to defunding Planned Parenthood. They stood their ground. There were times when the White House pushed back, and they stood their ground and said, this is non-negotiable, this will not come out. And that was important too, because there were moments when those discussions happened when none of us were in the room, but they were in the room. So it's also important to have people who are believers and who stand firm at key moments. Now, a lot of the reason they stood firm is because we all pushed them, but at the end of the day, they were still the ones standing in the room by themselves, not with us.
I'm not one to praise politicians normally, except I will praise politician staff, because in 2024, when we were all about getting Trump elected and making sure that the life issue was forefront, there was a staffer in Steve Scalise's office who's now actually in the administration, and a staffer who's still with Mike Johnson, who started talking with offices saying, you better be prepared, you needed to fund Planned Parenthood in any reconciliation bill. It would not have happened if those initial conversations hadn't happened to prepare them for the onslaught of us going up there.
I think it started way back, because after Dobbs, the GOP and the president, now president, were saying that it was over. And we heard that they were going to strip out the pro-life platform from the GOP goals for our country. Students for Life started mailing, emailing, calling. I personally, and one staff member in this room, we called every GOP chair in the entire country. And we called them, and we visited them, and we called the president, and we talked to his campaign staff. And we said, by no means can you distance yourself from the issue of abortion. This is not only a life and death issue, it's a life and death issue for the Republican Party. We want a home for Republican pro-life voters, your most loyal voters. Life is a winning issue. Everything shows that. It's not a winning issue with the media, but it's a winning issue. And I think it started way earlier. I don't think reconciliation would have happened unless people up on this platform had been saying during the campaign, when you get in office, this needs to mean something. And I don't want a proclamation.
Yeah.
I want something real.
I want to spend a minute talking about the losses in the states with the ballot amendments, because I think it's an important moment where we've actually seen the reversal in this last election. We won 3 states, and they're all unique in their own victory. And what I'm most excited about is what happened in Nebraska, actually, because that is penultimately the incremental win that the movement needed in a place with a competing ballot amendment. But looking back on the ballot amendments, we were outspent. We knew we were going to be outspent. And I would say the movement maybe got caught a little flat-footed after Dobbs, a little bit. But we knew we were going to be outspent. And when you're encountering Goliath, you're encountering, for comparison, you're fighting against big tobacco, and our resources. We knew our resources were going to be tiny compared to big abortion, but you're also fighting 50 years of learned helplessness and confusion amongst the population, and this emphasis that dehumanized the preborn child, and that abortion was safe and in a woman's best interest. These messages and the billions of dollars that have been spent over 50 years convincing our culture that this is a good thing for society, we encountered that really in these ballot amendments. And so the other thing that AUL has always been an incremental organization. My feedback to states is to not let perfect be the enemy of incremental. Incrementalism wins the day. And when you have, I always say there's a pendulum, and when that pendulum swings too far to one side or the other, you're going to get bit, because you got to meet public where public's at. And of course, we have to move public incrementally and culturally over time. But when you get ahead of yourselves and you get ahead of your skis, it's gonna bite you. I think Abraham Lincoln was the individual that said, if you don't have popular public sentiment, you don't have anything. You can't do anything without popular public sentiment. And what I find exciting about that is the wins that we saw in November, the different types of wins, the renewed emphasis, and I think this is a big issue, the renewed emphasis on the harm that abortion causes women. That is so important, because that captivates a lot of people that don't necessarily believe, because again, they've been manipulated for a long time, that the preborn child's a human and deserving of human dignity. But if you can make the solid scientific medical case that abortion is not in a woman's best interest and is in fact harmful to women, there is a path to victory. And we saw that play out in the state ballot amendments this last cycle. Now, in addition to a governor who just went all in. And, so each state has different lessons learned that I think we can take to the movement moving forward.
Now, I'm probably going to regret this next question, because I do want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. And I know Nathan, in his great devotional this morning, was teaching us how not to eat each other. But I have no problem sticking a fork every now and then in my ally, if that's needed. And I have no problem if somebody sticks a fork in me, because sometimes that is what helps temper you going forward. On one aspect where we do need boldness, and Bob, both you and John touched on this, because we could win as many elections as possible. We could pass as much good legislation in the states as we can. However, if we cannot address on the federal level the issue of chemical abortions, it could all be for naught.
That's right.
Why has it been taking so long for this administration to get that, and what can we do to change that?
Well, I think initially there was a lot of patience because of reconciliation and the general perception that the ability to cut Planned Parenthood, God willing, for 10 years, it was one, was worth a lot of united effort. And there was a united effort. But I do think that it's a mistake to do one thing at a time. I'm a mother, I'm a woman. What woman in here multitasks, you know? Don't we have like 50 lists going in our head? So my head is 24/7 chemical abortion plus defunding plus a lot of things. It is inappropriate, it is a mistake for the administration at HHS, at FDA, and at EPA not to be reconsidering these pills. 3 Democratic Party presidents, without 60 votes in the Senate, forced these pills on the market and slowly deregulated them. And in the messaging about chemical abortion pills, as you know, Students for Life's unique contribution, I believe, has been raising the pills as an issue, but also the fact that abortion water pollution is real. We will be releasing a peer-reviewed study. My friends, you are drinking other people's abortions. You are. Man, woman, and child. And everybody, man, woman, and child, needs progesterone. But these pills kill women and they kill infertility. And when we're going around the country, and I've testified in a number of states, I don't think we talk enough about the specific harms of chemical abortion, and that is the increase of infertility in this nation, the empowerment of abusers, and the fact that many women are harmed by this. And the ProPublica reporting is disastrous. And one thing that John said that I really appreciate is we've got some new communications groups for communicating these stories. Because to jump off your Abraham Lincoln thing, Abraham Lincoln said that he thought Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, was the reason why they could rally the support to change the nation. It was a story. We need to tell more and better stories. I would invite you to follow Students for Life social media. But there are powerful storytellers up here, and we're not getting anywhere without stories, and women are being harmed.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to?
Kristi.
It's always hard to follow Kristi, I understand.
Yeah. I think Kristi's exactly right. The only thing I would add to that is the answer has to come on the federal level eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, I know everything that we do on the state level is extremely important, but it gets wiped out if you can mail chemical abortion from one state to another. You can have the best protections possible in a state, and it's meaningless if those pills can come over the border unregulated.
So this means we're all going to join to get that Comstock Act enforced.
100%.
Right?
There's a gentleman by the name of Josh Craddock who has made his way to Washington D.C. who is in the Department of Justice. We co-authored with Lila Rose an article on Comstock. Now, it's a reach with this administration, but you have a gentleman like Josh Craddock at DOJ now that can really make an impact in that regard.
I'm really excited. I'm just saying this is news. This is a good thing.
This is a very good thing. But I want to add one thing to the conversation on chemical abortion. So we've been working very closely with Ethics and Public Policy Center. So 2 points. One is that increasingly, I think you're going to see the movement in partnership. And we're doing this in so many different ways. AUL's partnered with Lifeline, Heartbeat, and CareNet on an advocacy for pregnancy centers. We're doing partnerships with Live Action and EPPC. We just were off stage a second ago talking about Students for Life and AUL partnering. SBA and AUL have partnered for a long time on the Hill. So this emphasis of partnership is so incredibly important in creating a networked approach, organizations understanding their unique value to the movement, staying in that lane, not trying to be everything to everybody, because you miss what you're really good when you're trying to do everything. But when you can focus on what you're good at, and for AUL it's policy, for Students for Life it's grassroots and activism, for SBA it's the political arm of the movement. And there's some overlap, but I think generally speaking, the movement's coming together. But speaking specifically of chemical abortion, the FDA, I have a background in healthcare, and I know how the FDA acts. The FDA needs evidence. They can move politically, but they also, our Commissioner McCarry needs good evidence. And so we need to deliver to him peer-reviewed evidence, and that's the next step of this claims data set, is peer-reviewed evidence that he can use to justify re-implementation of REMS.
One of my favorite quotes from Mother Teresa is, "I can't do what you do, you can't do what I do, imagine what we can do together." One somewhat silly question, which people usually expect from me, and then let's go quickly to Q&A. Elon Musk decides he no longer just wants to make babies, he wants to save them as well. And he gives each one of you individually $100 million. What are you going to do with it?
That was a funny setup. I'm not sure everybody got it, but that was a funny setup.
I'm a slow read.
You were nice enough to tip us all off that you were going to ask that question, so we appreciate it.
Nobody wants to be surprised with Elon Musk.
And I did give that some thought. We have a unique political system in this country, and that is every 4 years we have this quadrennial national discussion as to where the country should go in the future. It's called a presidential election. People pay attention, they get involved in issues, they know what they want out of their candidates, they examine them, they all of a sudden have an interest in big issues. In my lifetime, big issues like the Vietnam War and civil rights have been decided in presidential elections. In my opinion, the most important thing for the pro-life community to do over the next 2 presidential elections is to make presidential elections about the question of when do you become you? When does a baby become a baby that needs to be protected in law? And if I had $100 million and I could do anything I wanted with it, I'd do an independent expenditure effort supporting some Republican candidate who's willing to go out there and say, this is where a baby needs to be protected. I'd love to see it at conception, but that's not where we can get right now. But 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever, wherever we start, some kind of a national discussion where people understand that that's a serious limitation has to be a national limitation.
Yeah.
At Students for Life, for more than 15 years, we have a program, Standing With You, which networks people in all 50 states to the services in their area. And we have a program, Abortion-Free Cities, where we do outreach to try to not just get rid of abortion, but let people know about their alternatives. And we find we've done door knocking. We keep our students busy. Our little army stays in shape. So we don't just come out every 2 years in the cycles. We go full term. So we're out there door knocking on behalf of supported services. We've found that almost 80% of people don't know that there's a pregnancy care center in their community. They don't know that it's even there. So I would like to see some of that money end the number one destroyer of children in the womb, which is abortion, and chemical abortion in particular. And I don't actually think we need studies for that, John. I think they just need to do their job. That's just me, because I want the studies, but frankly, they have the authority, and the Democrats had no authority and had no problem stepping on preborn life. That's what I think. You know, they've got the authority, they won the election, do something. But we could do better as a nation to communicate what services are available. I'll give you an example of how crazy it is. Students for Life has an original piece of legislation, the Pregnant Students' Rights Act. And the only thing it did was require that as part of Title IX communication, you had to let students know about services for pregnant and parenting students. There's Title IX compliance on every college campus, every one. All they had to do, because a lot of those services include abortion, all they had to do, and the Republicans all voted for this, was say that we would also tell them about services for women. And we couldn't get that bill passed because of the Democrats. I'm just telling you that we have to be as loud and proud about protecting life and law as we are about serving life after. We're in favor of that. We're trying to do that. I know a lot of us are involved in it, but I'd like to see us equally loud about how we help the women that have the babies.
Love it. Yeah. So I think the first thing I would do with $100 million, it's a lot of money. And quite frankly, I think the best move would be to partner with Leonard Leo and the Life Leadership Conference and make sure that all the organizations in the movement are funded, and funded to a point where they can do their mission and what they do uniquely well, really, really, really well, both at the federal and the state levels. That would be the first thing that I would do. The second thing that I would do is to increase and expedite the decentralization of the movement into the states from both a grassroots and from a policy perspective with partners in the movement. The third thing that I would do is launch a media campaign. And you know, I'm sure we've all seen the He Gets Us commercials. I might not totally agree with the approach, but it takes a lot of money to launch a public service announcement and a media campaign that changes people's perspective. So one thing that Americans United for Life is looking at, how can we launch a public service announcement on family policy, which is something you can do in a PSA? How can you launch a PSA on foster and adoption? How can you launch a PSA on fatherhood? How can you launch, and this is important too, because the unawareness, how do you launch a PSA on pregnancy centers and maternity homes and the support services to bring awareness to the amazing work that these organizations are doing? And then the last thing that I would say is I firmly believe we're not going to win this battle without the church, and the church standing up in a big way, like they did in the civil rights movement, like they did to end slavery. The church is so critically important. And while we have contingencies of the church that are overtly pro-life and strongly pro-life, my emphasis is not on the churches, you know what I'm talking about. The churches in Washington, D.C., where you walk by and all you see are pride flags. You don't see a cross. I'm talking about the evangelical churches that are really big, that have really strong faith, that have great pastors, but they are afraid to preach this message because they think it's political. And so one thing that AUL is beginning to look at is how can we influence pastors in evangelical circles to begin being more bold in preaching on this issue. And again, that might take a lot of money to do that, to convince pastors to have presence at the leadership conference that evangelicals attend, to be in their circles, talking their language, and then adding peer pressure from pastor to pastor. How do you do this, stripping the politics from this and making it clearly about what the Bible says about human dignity, combined with God's grace, redeeming love, and forgiveness for those that have participated in the fact that they have a seat in the church, and we're going to help counsel you if you've had an abortion to help you recover.
All good answers. I am a little disappointed none of you said I would give it to you. However, now it's a little hard to see, except do we have any questions out there? Come on. Anybody, come on, don't be afraid. No? Okay.
Great.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you so much for all the information. Mac De La Cruz with Center for Arizona Policy. Just on that last comment, okay, with pastors and what is needed. Right now in Arizona, we have about 800 pastors who are willing to sign a declaration for life. What are the steps? What is it that we need to follow up with those pastors? And many of those pastors are pastors that before, I mean, like we had a heartbreak story last year with the passing of Prop 139. But I tell those pastors, you are the miracle. You are what God is doing in the state of Arizona, because many of those pastors were not willing to speak about the issue, were not willing to stand, and are now preaching on that issue, have signed that declaration, but now we need to follow up with them. What are the steps? What is it that we need to follow up with them?
I love your question because I'm a step ahead of you. I've already met with Pastor Eric. Pro-Life Pastors was started by Pastor Eric at Evident Life Church in Arizona. They have over 900 pastors, primarily only, this is interesting, primarily only in Arizona and Florida, that have signed a declaration saying that they will teach, preach, and counsel on human dignity. And he has 0 paid staff. He is a full-time pastor, super busy, and so we're actually looking at creating a partnership with Pastor Eric. How can we quadruple that number before the next election? And I think with a little bit of resource behind that, and a little bit of juice, and a little bit of peer-to-peer pressure, we can take what he's built and we can expand it vastly. So we've already been in conversations with America First Principle Institute, with a handful of different other partners to help accelerate the idea that we can get, and so I for one, would love to have a Jack Hibbs, and I mean, this sounds crazy, but I'd love to have a Craig Rochelle, and I would love to have an Andy Stanley. I mean, people that, again, that we might not think are all the way there. If we can get them to speak this into the evangelical circles, we can get that declaration quadrupled in no time. So your question is spot on, and it's something I'm already thinking a lot about.
I think you need to ask them to speak directly about life as not a political issue, but a moral issue that requires your vote. And I would encourage them to set up voter registration so they can vote their values. You don't have to tell a candidate, you don't have to point to a party, but if we're going to prioritize the things that God says about creating children in the womb, I think that's pretty clear who you're voting for race by race. And so I'm a big believer in church-based voter registration.
It's one thing on the federal level is with legislators, sometimes I don't think we're the best at holding them accountable. Because part of your question, because if they're, when I was at Family Research Council, that's when Tony started his pastors' outreach and all. Now with Catholic Vote, working with a lot of bishops and dioceses and priests. It's kind of like with a politician. If the 900 are signing up, that's great. But I would rather have those 900 be held accountable and do what they say they're going to do than to have 1,800. So perhaps giving them resources as well. So pastors and priests are competitive as well sometimes. So you give out an award every now and then for one heck of a sermon or a homily that somebody does or something like that. To encourage, we're all human beings. We like encouragement, and that makes us want to do more.
You're 100% right. And pastors,
that I'm a human being, or sorry.
No, you're definitely not right about that. But pastors tend to be leaders in their communities, and I don't just mean in their church communities, but in their local communities as well. If they did radio interviews in which they talked about their pro-life views, if they did op-eds in local newspapers that they placed at key times before elections, that would go a long way, in my opinion, towards influencing people, even beyond the gates of their particular congregations.
You know, I got to throw some love to my dad. My father and grandfather ministers. They're both on with the Lord now. I saw my dad cry 3 times in his life, one when my mom got cancer, one when my grandmother died, and one on Roe v. Wade. And he was a big letter writer. So now I feel sad. But I've got a great picture of him in the 70s with him and a Methodist minister friends that went out with these signs about the evilness of abortion. I'm going to get it framed one of these days. But pastors have a voice in the community and people hear it.
Right.
Yeah, and so I'll give you one good example. Florida, in the run-up to Amendment 4, we were very active, and I know you all were super active in Florida, with the Governor's Faith Council. And on that Faith Council, they had been working diligently to convince Pastor Craig at Grace Family Church in Tampa. And I know this church very well because we lived in Tampa for about a decade, and we went to Idlewild Baptist. Our kids actually went with their friends to Grace Family. Grace Family is a massive evangelical church in Tampa. Just to give you an idea of the scale, they rented out Raymond James Stadium and baptized like over 1,000 people this last Easter. Big church. And the pastor was very hesitant. Pastor Craig was very hesitant to preach this message. It took a leader in that church to stand up and say, no, you will preach this message. Coach Tony Dungy. And if you've not seen this ad, you should go look at it, because Coach Dungy, and I know our kids played sports together in Idlewild, and they were phenomenal athletes, by the way. But Coach Dungy and his wife, he doesn't just talk it, he lives it. They've adopted, I think, 7 children. He is a strong man of God. He's not partisan. And he stood up to Pastor Craig and he said, you have got to preach this message. And you know what happened? Pastor Craig preached the message. And to your point, Bob, not only did he preach the message, he got on a podcast and he spoke on a podcast. And you're spot on in that they are community leaders and they need to be a voice above and beyond their church.
Right. Okay. Any other questions?
Hey, Bob, I'm with you. I think the answer's at the federal level. What do you propose?
Bob for president?
Make America pro-life again, Bob.
Well, we need federal limits, and the limit, I mean, I would like to be as aggressive as possible, obviously. Heartbeat would be great if we could get it. The last time that we had a pain-capable bill introduced in the Senate, which was 2019, 2020, We had 47 co-sponsors to it. Now, at that point, pain capable was 20 weeks. That was the science. It's now been changed to 15 weeks. But at that point, we had 20 co-sponsors, and then when we went to a cloture vote, we got, 47 co-sponsors. When we went to a cloture vote, we had 53 senators vote in favor of cloture. People forget that. We had 53 United States senators vote in favor of a federal limit at 20 weeks, which now would be 15 weeks using the same basic science. So something like that. And are we going to get it immediately? No, but unfortunately, we will need 60 votes in the Senate in order to get it. So we need to increase the Republican presence in the Senate because that's the only place we're going to get those votes. And then at the very least, hope for something like the pain-capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which is at 15 weeks, or maybe a little bit better than that, maybe Heartbeat, which would be a little bit better.
I love everything about Bob, but I want Heartbeat or better.
No, I do too, but
Just,
I also want to be realistic.
Yeah, and incremental, for sure.
except that the difference between 15 weeks, more than 9 in 10 abortions take place. So it's just uncomfortable to work this long and this hard to draw a line so late. The New York Times had a horrible opinion piece saying if they'd known they would take 15 weeks, would have given them to it years ago and taken this off the table.
Yeah.
So, and I personally like Heartbeat because at a heartbeat there's a confirmed pregnancy. It's very difficult. We talk a lot about life at conception, and life does begin at conception, but when you're in a medical environment, you know there's a baby. When there's a heartbeat, I say this having heard many a heartbeat in my own pregnancies.
While we continue to work on it, because I completely agree, while we continue to work on that, because it's not going to happen overnight, I do think there is opportunity right now, and we saw it in reconciliation, to work on pro-family policy. Pro-family policy leans to the direction of a pro-life worldview. And so when in the reconciliation, you have everything from extension of the child tax credit to what I absolutely love is the Trump savings accounts. This is going to investment account. This is going to help children learn the value of compound magic, as I call it, of compounding interest and savings. You have different and new rules on maternity and paternity leave. But we also introduced the Healthy Moms and Babies Act. This is amazing. It was introduced on a bipartisan basis in both the House and the Senate. When has there ever been a pro-family policy? And Healthy Moms and Babies, essentially, Hyde Smith and Tim Kaine, and before Hyde Smith, it was Vice President Vance, Vice President Vance, we're working on this piece of legislation that helps moms achieve childbirth without having this significant expense. And I have a woman on my team that wrote an op-ed about this, about her experience and the amount that she had to pay out of her high deductible plan. And it's really hard for families. And so I think that a bit of a change in mentality around what can we do to support families to have children. And then the next step, as far as I'm concerned, is what can we do to help support marriage? Marriage is the best defender against abortion that we have. So what can we do from a policy perspective? And one easy one is the elimination of any sort of tax penalty for married couples. But what else can we do? Single family housing. I love Mike Lee's idea of let's convert federal land into housing, because we know that when people live in single family houses, not only do they have more children, they stay married longer. These are the things that we need to be doing as a society, and we can do them now because a lot of that stuff is bipartisan basis. But we have also, Bob, to your point, we have absolutely got to continue the drumbeat on limitations.
Best decision my wife ever let me make was get married. So I don't know if there's any. We're at time, but we'll take one last question.
This is just a quick one. I'm Joseph Combe. I'm the policy director here at FPAF. This has been such a good session. I just want to know from each of y'all, at my position at FPA, I'm seeing our messaging across the country and at the federal level. From the bottom up, it seems really positive on the life front. People are really hopeful. They put out this positive vision. But from the top down, Washington onward, it feels not negative, but apologetic, like I'm kind of sorry for what we believe. We have to earn back your trust, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just wondering from each of you, if you had 30 seconds to say, how do we improve our messaging as a holistic pro-life movement, what would be your prescription for that?
No, I love that. I think you're 100% right. But I do feel like it comes from them hearing from us. and from us applauding the people who do it right. When then Senator Marco Rubio discussed his views on the value of children, no matter how they're conceived, whether by rape or by incest, I thought that was a game-changing description. But politicians are afraid, and they need to hear from us that it's good to talk about it. We welcome that conversation. You know, at Students for Life, we say that we reject prejudice against people based on race, sex, age, stage of development, perception of abilities, and the manner of your conception, because you're valuable and do not deserve to be shamed for anything. You have the same. We don't issue a birth certificate in the United States with the rating system for whether your parents were having a really good night or whether you were conceived out of wedlock. You know, it's an A+ birth certificate. Go you. You know, that's not how it works. Every birth certificate notes that a unique and valuable person has entered the world. And I do feel like the fear to discuss the value of children, no matter how they were conceived, is not a failure on our part, but a challenge to increase it. But a lot of politicians avoid the conversation because they don't want to get asked that hard question. Mm-hmm. What about the woman who was raped? My mother's best friend was conceived in rape. Lovely woman. I did want to date her son, but I love my husband. So I'm just saying that people are valuable because they're people, not because of their origin story. And how you began is not how you end. And I do feel like, and SBA does it, we're all doing candidate training all the time. Everybody up here is a brilliant wordsmith. We have to help the politicians be comfortable with the fact that the hard questions aren't that hard. Mm-hmm. If you start from the premise that everybody is valuable, everybody deserves a shot. They're afraid. I'm not afraid. I think it's funny is 1,000 billion interviews that I've done where the young reporter just got assigned the beat, calls Students for Life, gets me on the phone and wants to challenge me with the rape question. And I'm like, let's have at it, baby. I love that question. I love that question. We need to help others love that question.
I would just say look at examples that we have, and I would point really to Glenn Youngkin. I mean, and I love DeSantis, but DeSantis is in a pretty safe state. But Glenn Youngkin in Virginia can be overtly pro-life. I've now been at 2 walks with Glenn, and he is out front. He's out front, and he is bold in his opinion. Now, he is a bit of a force of nature, like Governor DeSantis, but I think the message is you can run for statewide office, you can run for House of Representative, and you can be safe being bold on the life issue without having to duck and feel like it's a losing issue. The second thing I'll say, and you said this earlier, I don't think Democrats are going to continue to lead with this issue because they lost. Yeah. They lost big time. And now it's going to be in their mix, but it's not going to be number one. I think immigration will probably be number one, the tariffs maybe. But I think because of that, it gives us an opening in ways. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and the last election, it seemed like every single commercial was a Democrat talking about bodily autonomy and reproductive freedom, including the mayor of Richmond, who put a transvestite on the TV to talk about this, a mayor. But I think this is changing. I think that demographic, that is changing, and I think it's not going to be talked about as much on the left. So it gives us an opportunity.
Just a quick point, Tom, because I know we have to wrap up. On a national level, I'm very optimistic in terms of the people that we work with in the Congress. Mm-hmm. Marco Rubio, who's not in Congress anymore, Secretary of State, but Marco Rubio is incredibly articulate on all sides of this issue, all aspects of this issue, a true believer. But so are John Thune, Mike Johnson, Lindsey Graham, Steve Scalise. I could go on and on. We had a reception in which we had freshman members of the Republican freshman class, and we talked about, with all of them, we talked about defunding Planned Parenthood through reconciliation. Over and over again, I had freshman members come up to me and say, this is a non-negotiable. We're not going to let them strip this out. I can give you name after name after name of freshmen. Pat Harrigan from North Carolina, Brandon Gill from Texas, Ashley Hinson, who's a second-term member from Iowa, who came up to me and said, don't worry about it. This is not coming out. We are standing strong on this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are not just people who say, I'm pro-life. These are people who understand what it means to be pro-life and understand their position. So I'm very optimistic, actually. Yeah.
And, of course, Senator Jim Banks from the great state
of course, Senator Jim Banks. Sorry.
And that's, you always want to marry somebody who's to the right of you, and I think the senator did that. I want to thank all of you for sticking it out. Appreciate appreciate all of you. I know you probably already work with a lot of these organizations, especially if you're in the States, but continue to do so. We are stronger together than apart. God bless and safe travels home.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you all. Thank you all. I'm going to jump right in, too. For those of you that are getting this in the email, the video and the transcript, there's a reason why we're highlighting this. We had an idea that our most important issue would go last. We read the Bible. Sometimes we get that right. Sometimes we get it wrong. We said that's the most important thing. We'll have that as a crescendo on Friday. A lot of people told us they wanted to be here because in the past SoConCon, this turned into a debate session. But when the elements of the debate left, so did some of the audience. And now we're using this as a culmination of SoConCon because we want our audience to know, and the more than 30 groups that invested in this conference, that it is the life issue that binds us together. It is our most important issue. And these organizations, these brands that are on the stage, these subject matter experts, are the Family Policy Council's most important allies. This is where things come from in our movement. And that's why we're packaging this up, because whether you're a Family Policy Council, staff, board member, whether you're a statesman here and you're taking this information out of here, there's no more important refreshing than you could have than to listen to this session, listen to the words they had, and take the next step of getting involved. SBA has the best programs that are going on nationally and federally that you can imagine. They're getting involved in mobilization. Students for Life speaks directly from my heart and how God talks to me about where we should be as activists, as people showing up for the fight. Americans United for Life, John Mize is like, if I had a partner to fight for life in where God sent us out in twos, I think it would be with John. And Tom looks after us all. And I'm serious. Our whole team, Amanda, Bunny, everybody. And this is the best team that we could put forward. And know that SoConCon 25 is a big deal because the strategy and tactics we talked about here, we got to be smarter in 26 toward 28 around life. And we're just very blessed that we were able to have this session. Thank you all. Thank you.